Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Well, that is post covering finance and property news. It's Monday evening, and of course, Edwin is back for another rant. And Edwin, it's a bit chilly down there, I think, at the moment, in all sorts of ways.
Oh, look, it is. It is very chilly. Yeah, in many ways. And I didn't realize, Martin, I've got my anti-chill vest on, and I had it on for the last couple of weeks. The other one as well, and it's sponsored by Champions. This must be the channel of champions. Those that predominantly the champions that watch our Monday evening property rants and stay ahead of the curve. And on that note, I'm also promoting Super Oats. Yeah, the hot drink of champions, Martin. Yeah, Super Oats. There you go. Got to do something to stay warm, otherwise the mountain weather's hitting 3 degrees now, so it's only going to get cooler over the next few weeks.
Yeah, you've got to get your oats, Edwin. You've got to get your oats. And I'll tell you what, you just look at the start of the new financial year and you think, oh, what a mess. What a mess. The data showing that property prices were quite strong in June, although not in Melbourne. We've got a whole lot of shenanigans around, will the tax cuts and everything else help or not? A lot of interesting signalling going on from politicians versus maybe economists. We have got the question of the planning rules and regulations and how they're going to change or not. And so much information coming out now from the building and construction sector suggesting that government intervention over the last few years have, well, frankly, messed them over.
Over the last few years, over the last few decades. More to the point, since the infamous first-time buyers grants and everything else along the way in between, and right up to the joint venture with buyers that state and federal governments throughout the potential first-time buyers, those that unfortunately they wanted to save, but what they were really sending wasn't life rafts. They were selling concrete barges because the first-time buyers and those that wanted to get into the property market to have that longevity of tenure, as I keep on saying, a principal place of residence, a roof over their heads, with quiet, peaceful enjoyment. They've literally got thrown under a bus and the like. But Martin, is it given with the left and taking with the right, or is it given with the right and taking with the left? Because all these announcements of how new tax cuts could save you an entire month's mortgage repayment, but everything else is just going through the roof. So it's really, I'd say given it to us by the right hand and taking it away from the left. So it's interesting. So a more, as you say, more announceables are coming your way, and let's see what happens. What else they throw at it, and when they're going to call, even when they're going to call an early election.
Well, it is really interesting, and I'm fascinated by the polarization that we're getting at the moment with regard to how to interpret the interventions from government in recent times. There was this saying, well, the stage 3 tax cuts will take effect today, but the truth is that we need more tax cuts just to stop the tax rates from climbing higher, because of course they've been taking it away for years and years and years, and now they're giving a little bit back. And that, of course, is going to impact households quite differently. I did some modeling just to see what the impact would be, assuming that you get the tax cuts, which sort of dribble out, and you get the credits on fuel bills. And if you're in Queensland, you get a little bit more of the handouts. And net, my view is that households are still going to be going backwards. So I'm not sure I'm going to see a huge impact on real household budgets. But of course, the truth is that you can actually see the various positioning. You've got Chalmers saying, oh, the relief will beat inflation and will absolutely, make it easier for people. it's worth highlighting the fact that the ABS has found that the energy subsidies and the rental assistance, etc., did help to reduce price increases of those essentials for a period. But then Chris Richardson warns that the largesse will ultimately keep inflation and interest rates higher for longer by adding to demand. So it's certainly not a simple question as to who are the winners and who are the losers here. And I think you've got it dead right. You know, they basically are giving it back to you on one hand, but they're then taking it away again. And they've been taking it away again for years and years and years, because in fact, the proportion of tax that households are paying has almost never, ever been higher. And that's the real point, I think. So I'm afraid that this is a very marginal impact in my view. I think net, though, it probably will be a little bit inflationary. I know that there was some surveys suggesting that some younger households will probably save the money. But looking at my surveys, the households with mortgages, which have negative cash flow, all they'll do is just prop themselves up for a short amount of time. And of course, as these impacts go away, the inflationary surge then comes back again. So I'm not sure we're solving anything really.
No, and the other side that's not really discussed are the elderly, the single parents, and the ones that live day by day, week by week on a government assistance of one form or another, whether it be health benefits or the pension or any other benefit that they may receive from the government. I mean, they talk about the households that are earning 100,000 plus, or combined 165,000 plus. But there's no real discussion. But then again, Martin, is it a vote worth getting? Well, obviously not, because they're not really moving any needles towards them. Because in my view, they think that they've lost. Maybe they think that the elderly and the pensioners are staunch, right-wing voters or liberal voters, and who cares? But then again, when the Libs are in power, do they think that those in need, those that need assistance, are staunch Labor support? I mean, it's really farcical. I mean, it's really not. Again, it's just one of those things that you seldom hear a lot news or commentary about the groups that are in need, and they're affected the most by the cost of living crisis with regards to food. Every day the discussion that we were having before we started the show, which was around the price of electricity and other resources to keep warm or keep cool in summer. This is what's really not talked about amongst those groups. And the question is, why not?
Oh, well, it's political, of course. And the cost of energy in Australia is an absolute scandal. We are paying, in the Australian context, 5 times what we should be paying because of the way that the gas market works, and the fact that we are paying the marginal price of gas for our electricity. And of course, the more that people are arguing that gas will be a very significant element in the mix over the next few years, that's just going to put ever more pressure on energy prices, because we're not actually clawing back from those international exporters what we should be clawing back. I mean, it's Australian resources that are going offshore. They're making huge amounts of money. And in fact, in some cases, they're shipping it out to places like China, and then China's on selling it to other markets around the world and making a huge profit. And of course, they're talking about building import gas terminals in Australia to bring back the gas back to Australia. So again, it's reinforcing the international price of gas. We should be reserving gas in Australia, and we should be paying the marginal cost of gas, not the full global price. It would be as if Kuwait or one of the other oil-producing companies in the Middle East started charging their consumers the international price of fuel rather than the marginal price. But of course, we haven't done that. We've just built a horrible hole, again, because of bad politics, because effectively the politicians are very much in the grip of some of these international corporations, and the corporations have way more power, and therefore government doesn't want to actually deal with the critical issues. The net result of all of this, the high taxes and everything else, comes out this way. This is actually from the recent OECD study that showed that the real gross household disposable income per capita, which is a very good measure of, how wealthy we are on an individual basis. Look at what's happened to Australia. It's dropped dramatically in recent times, and compare that with the trends in the OECD, we've fallen through the floor. So actually, despite what you may think, many Australians are really doing it really tough at the moment. And in fact, I published my most recent stress data, and I always, of course, include the rental stress information as well as the mortgage stress information. Rental stress is now at 77.3% of those in the rental sector having cash flow issues. That's as high as it's ever been. And half of households, and in fact, if you want to see more about that, I made a show yesterday called More Household Trouble in the Land of Oz, which actually has done very well on YouTube since I put it up. So we have a really, really critical issue. And I think it's really worth just reflecting on that in the context of, all the other stories that are going. This one, of course, household homes deliver wealth with an 8% jump. So they're claiming that, the value of properties are rising. Now, of course, home values, a theoretical number, which lifted by 0.7% in June and hit a national record high of 793,883. But of course, the theoretical value of a property is not the same as what you need from a cash flow perspective to pay the bills. And it's interesting that Phil Donoghue there from Deutsche Bank made the point that the record high house prices would feed into the Reserve Bank's decision on interest rates and may prompt a lift in the cash rate by August the 1st. I think it will justify another rate increase, because if properties are trading at these record high prices, clearly the interest rate setting is not high enough to slow down the momentum. So that's worth just reflecting on, Edwin. And it's worth just for a second looking at the data there. This is actually for the Dwellings Index from CoreLogic. And you can see there that there's a huge spread across the country. So if you look at Melbourne, it's gone nowhere. Hobart, gone pretty much nowhere. But some of the other areas like Brisbane, of course, and Western Australia, Perth, 23.6% year over year and 2% in the month in Perth, shows you just how crazy it is. And then just going back to that Perth story for a second, this is the other side of the story. So this is actually another report that said that the non-mean tested home building schemes introduced by the Western Australian government during the COVID-19 pandemic has been blamed for overheating the local construction market for years and contributing to the collapse of hundreds of businesses. The building bonus, which was a $25,000 home builder grant, led to a stampede, and the industry has said it's going to take 5 years to sort itself out. And the fact of the matter is we've got huge insolvencies, 140 insolvencies in the Western Australian construction sector in the 22-23 financial year. And by the way, if you look at the prospective default rates, they're actually highest in WA, where prices have gone up. So it's a real mess. And the bottom line is, which is where you came into this part of the conversation, it's all driven by stupid government policy, both federal and state.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing was also with that, around Australia was when the builders got in and they wanted to pick up a lot of that gravy that was being dished out by the government, and they got themselves caught up with the fixed price contracts and the costs of materials and labour shot, when it skyrocketed. And this is when a number of our state politicians then started going overseas to open up the state borders for the new migrants that you and I called would be coming in. We called it in 2019. So this is where we are. And I mean, it was something like year on year 625,000 or something migrants have come in over the last financial year. The only thing that we're really, as I keep on saying, you got to do one or two. You got to do one or two things, or both. Go back to university, go back to a tertiary education institution, RTL and do yourself a favour and get a degree in politics, then join some political party and then go up the ranks. It's going to be safe. You're going to be safe because the even councillors have increased the rates. They're increasing their pays. It's a gravy train. So don't just become a real estate agent. Don't think that the majority of the real estate industry is not making money, as you and I know in reality, because I would say that 60-70% are barely making the award wage, and that's being generous. Most don't, because there's not a lot of transactions really happening when you're talking about 57,000 certificate holders or license holders in New South Wales. But look, this is the thing. So pursue a political career. And yes, pursue a political career and also get your certificate of registration and then get a class 2 real estate license and then go into a class 1 and then get a franchise, whether it be from the Libs or the Labs, and your home sweet home. That's my answer to all this. Because you can't get more farcical than that, right? Because that's what it's all about. Open the borders. If the market starts to sink, let's bring in some novel idea as to how we're going to stop it from sinking, how we're going to prevent it, only to create problems 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the track. And in the meantime, the population increases. Let's not forget that, as we discussed a few weeks back, when Premier Lee was in Australia, and then China opened up the. I mean, we could fly out to China tomorrow, Martin, and have 15 days without with spending 15 days in China and having yum cha with Xi Jinping and Premier Lee if we wanted to. Where Yellen had her yum cha with over in Guangzhou, and without a visa. So how long before that we have a reciprocal arrangement with China? Because we need to support, in particular, we need to support the Melbourne market that's really going backwards at a rate of knots, and people are dumping their properties all over the place. So watch this space. There's going to be a lot of promotion from the Victorian Premier, and it's all going to be geared and centered around bringing in that tourist and dollar back into Victoria. But Forbes magazine said that over the weekend. I read that Forbes, and I posted on my X feed, that said that Victoria, Melbourne was actually recognised as the 4th best city to live in the world. Sydney came 7th. It's farcical. But then there you go. So somebody's reaching out to Forbes to put Melbourne 4th. So the promotion started. Next will be the ad campaigns overseas. Come and visit Melbourne because it's beautiful in the morning and better in the afternoon or something like that. They'll come up with a jingle of some sort. But meanwhile, everybody's bailing out of Melbourne. Businesses are bailing. Land taxes are going through the roof. Small businesses are being run out of Melbourne. Small manufacturing is being run out of Melbourne. So we're going to talk about it a little bit further into the show. But look, this is it, and this is where you and I find it very interesting, and so do our followers, and that is where the WeChat chatterers or the chatterers are really being influencing our markets. I mean. And we look at other contingencies as well, but it's interesting to see what's happening around them and what they think, and it'll be interesting to see how they're going to get called back into the Melbourne market. Is going to be very, very interesting, nevertheless.
Well, so let's just talk about the WeChat chats, because you've been looking at this for quite some time. It just seems to me. I mean, the bottom line, it seems to me, is saying more money is coming to us, right?
That's right, Martin. So you got Country Garden. We spoke about it more than 6 months ago with regards to what Dusty was saying with what the Weechatters were saying about Country Garden. We warned our followers, we warned our viewers not to touch any of the developments because they also there was the issues across some of the developments even in Sydney and North Ryde being one of them from memory. And now we find out that Country Garden. Let's not forget, Country Garden is one of the top 10 development companies, not much smaller than only probably could be just as big, if not a little bit smaller than Evergrande. But now it's hit one of the fund managers there, as I put out on my post in X, has given it a $0 rating for its value. So it's dead in the water. It's actually in the article there. The heading is calling the funeral before someone calling the funeral before the death or something along those lines. It's rather interesting, but we knew that this was on the cards, and we know that there are others also that are going to hit the wall. They're in China. The next one to come under will be from what Dusty and Evan tell me as to what the chatterers are saying, both local and the chatterers in mainland China, is that Wanda Group is also really the next on the chopping block. It's going to be the next victim. It's really a collapse of an empire. But we need to understand, why is this residential building construction building empire collapsing? Why? And there are some fundamental principles that we can attribute to this. One being the fact that supply and demand. There's a lot more supply than demand. We've got the Tumping generation. We got the last generation. Basically, we've also got that they don't want to buy. They are the last generation. They don't want to get involved with any mortgages. They don't want to get married. They don't want to have kids. It's basically enjoy WeChat, enjoy Uber Eats, let's say, home delivery, enjoy video games, dating online, and they don't even get to meet. Everything is done virtually, and then they've got TikTok, and they're saying, what else do we need? We don't. We are the last generation, so you've got this population cliff. We've got a population cliff there, which is unlike what our government is doing here, whereas we've got a huge population growth, but it's not by natural means. It's really importing more people from overseas in order to put that mattress under what you and I were saying was going to happen back in 2019, when we knew that there were a lot of even real estate offices that were running on the third and fourth credit cards just to stay afloat. But for the pandemic, that's when things were reversed. So you've got also huge unemployment there in China. I mean, we talk about the unemployment numbers here, potential growth to 5%. But over there with the young people, those who have just graduated, I mean, you're hitting 26, 27% unemployment for the new graduates. Hence the reason why they want to bail out and they want to run joy, which is run away, run as fast as you can from China. So you got bad construction. It's been a closed borders policy. There's no real population growth. So all these factors, you can parallel with some of the things that are happening here, but in order to get a grasp in what's happening. So what the WeChat chatterers are saying is, say, look, now this is where people and our followers have been warned not to follow a lot of the mainstream commentators and those pretend wannabe property commentators that just read Zero Hedge or some other second, third tier, Chinese whisper commentary from interpreted from some Western source. They're saying, look, as much as people are going to start talking about the fact that there's a collapse and there's going to be a continual collapse of major development companies there, which is going to sink a lot of people in China. It doesn't mean that people are going to be selling their assets abroad to take it into China. That is the reason why they are not going to sell their assets abroad and take it back into China if they are going to maintain their assets overseas. And if anything, those that can, those that are well connected with the government, those that are well connected with the CCP, are obviously going to be finding novel ways that we've spoken about on the show to get the money out of China and park it in other parts of the world. And predominantly, they're obviously eyeing out Sydney and the East Coast for that matter, because in China, there's only two places where you can park your money or you can invest in is Chinese company shares, which are a dud, and property. So property is tanking. The third tier, second tier cities are collapsing in terms of the property values. And then you got the other option is other companies that are predominantly controlled by the government anyway. That the government have got vested interest in them, strong vested interest, and so they can't. So they've got their option is, and they will find that way, as I said, to take the money out, and that's what they're doing, Martin. And this is where our followers and our viewers need to understand very clearly that it's the opposite to what the mainstream or what other property reporters and commentators will start talking about, because that they interpret it's the Western philosophy or the way that the Western commentators interpret what's happening or what happens or what they're thinking of doing. It's totally the opposite, which is interesting, because hence the reason why I put out on X is there's two new waves coming, and one from the Weechatters, and also another one obviously is the one that people have got to be very careful about, is the silent tigers. They're no longer silent. They're roaring out there, and they're really driving prices as well.
Yeah, and it's just worth reflecting. Look at the population of Australia and look at the total volume of housing that we've got in Australia, and then consider the relative populations of India, China, other places too. And you only need a small proportion of those people to actually say, actually Australia looked quite a good bet and we'll bring money into Australia. And there are still routes that people are using to bring money into Australia to buy property. And what that means is that you can see a significant influence on the local property market. And whilst people may not think it's a big deal, when you look at it in relative terms, it is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And this is something that we're also keeping an eye on, and that is Indonesia. Indonesia, and also obviously the silent tigers with again, I say with the newfound golden era that they've just walked into. And now we're looking also, we're starting to get some movement and traction from parts of Indonesia. And what people would say why, or the question why. The interesting thing is that and look, each to their own, but it's with regards to the religious beliefs. There are some good schools that here in Sydney, all over Sydney, that cater for their needs, and they feel again that it's a safe environment for them, or safer, and they'll get a better education to an extent. But again, also it's to bring money from and park the money elsewhere other than in countries where the rules and regulations are a lot tougher, and they're going to have to give a what for, a what for, a reason why they've got this wads, stacks of cash in hand. So better abroad than in those countries, and hence the reason why we're getting a lot of money from the silent tigers. They're telling us that a lot of money is coming over from India, and it's being parked in regional New South Wales, and predominantly at this moment in the Central Coast, in regions of the Central Coast where they're looking at acreage and just land banking. It's as simple as that. So, but will the governments, and I say governments because they're both culprits, the left and the right, will they close those loopholes? No, they won't. They won't, because they've got to have the fix. They've got to have the stamp duty fix. They've got to have the land tax fix. They've got to have the that fix, and they've got to pander to their peers in those government organisations from abroad, because otherwise, how can they retire? How can they retire the poor bunnies on just $300,000 super retirement package, and not have the 400 or $450,000 consultancy fee from the CCP, which look, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the package that the last premier from Victoria is going to be getting as a consultant, direct consultant from. That's what I'm hearing. That's like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, but that's nothing to sneeze at, right? So you got to keep these people happy. So, but again, the unfortunate thing is the Aussie battlers that are getting bulldozed. Companies that want to have a go are getting just taxed to the hilt where they can't do business. Small business operators, they've got too much red tape, so much red tape that they can't employ anybody other than their own family, because they need, there's all sorts of regulations around employment, around subcontracting and the like. So it's farcical. So so we've saved a month's mortgage in the tax, but they're taking it away from us in every other which way, and not really giving what Australia really stood for. Australia really stood for the small business entrepreneurs and growth, local growth, sustainable growth, not the growth that we've been subjected to over the last couple of years.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting you mentioned the Central Coast. I had a one-on-one the other day with somebody who was trying to work out what was going on. And he was actually looking to purchase a property up in the Central Coast. And he actually was taken around. He wanted quite a large property, and he wanted it with a bit of land. And he was actually shown 3 or maybe 4 properties. And interestingly, they had all been purchased by people coming in from overseas. And in each case, the bedrooms, which were sort of 4 or 5 or 6, had been subdivided. And in each case, they could now sleep between 14 and 20 in individual little cubicles, right? And what they had done, that had shifted effectively the rental return on the property by the current owners to the point where the price of the property was now about double what it was if it would just been a standalone property with 5 or 6 bedrooms with a bit of land. And what that highlighted to this individual was that there is a huge distortion going on in some areas because of the fact that these new purchasers are actually purchasing property for different purposes and therefore are valuing it in very different ways. And I thought that was really quite an interesting observation. The other observation, just while I'm on it, because I'm on a bit of a roll here, is, you were talking about politicians and, you should go into politics. Well, just remember that Sam Mostyn, as the new head of Australia, effectively has had a huge salary increase from the previous time. But the deputy governor at the RBA, 800,000 for turning up from the UK to be at number 2 at the RBA. What does that tell you about where value is and where it should be? I've got a real problem with that.
And this is it, and this is where we're at, and this is what I keep on saying. The first-time buyers, the Aussie battlers, they just wanted to get on the first step of the property ladder, and just got literally got rolled, and thrown in the deep end, and they're just sunk. They're not sinking. They didn't even. They're not even dog pedaling. They're just literally sunk. And it's the unfortunate thing, Martin, is the governments are just not working the way that they should be working, and that's for the people. And this is how long do we have to put up with this crap before real change happens? I don't know. We've still got we've got more issues around construction. We've got more issues around buildings, high-rise developments that are being flagged as unsuitable to live in, and it's just going to continue to rise. In the meantime, the solution that the governments are proposing is high-rise development in areas where we shouldn't be building that. But on partially a good note is the solution that we spoke about, which is may happen in September and may come to fruition, and they're pushing now the duplex power to for housing, which is your medium density development that I've been talking about for decades, where it should have been happening for the last 25 years. And even go as far as your 4 villa sites or your 4 townhouse sites in order to keep up with the demand that we haven't. But is it too little, too late? And my question is, Martin, will this change? Will it make the land cheaper or more expensive?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Edwin. And we'll just make sure that people understand that we're talking here about the fact that only 2 of the 32 local environment plans that leapt across Sydney allowed terraces and 1 or 2 story blocks for low density residential, that's R2 zones. So they're looking to reform that, which basically means that duplexes and semi-detached homes will be added to the housing mix in 124 council areas across the state. So that's the sort of the idea. But your question is a really interesting one. What does it actually do to land values? Because if you compare the value of a freestanding house, for example, versus a 2 duplex, it's quite an interesting and different story, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is, Martin. It is, and this is something that obviously, I've got certain opinions on certain things, and I've also got data on certain things, and also over the last month, I've been talking to some of our clients around this same topic because obviously they've already been approached by developers to buy their properties from as a development site. But I've ran the numbers, and this is where people are going to have to be very, very careful. And I can run a couple of scenarios in order for people to get an idea. So in one case, one of our clients that we're helping them to prepare the house for sale, and then we'll be consulting with agents to help take the property to market. And as a consultant, got called in, and our client basically said to me, "I'm being approached by a developer. I know what the duplex sites are worth in the area. This is in Dundas Valley, and he was offered." Between $1.5 and $1.6 million for the house and block of land as a development site. And in this case, now people have got to understand, you've got to approach these things on a case by case basis, right? So I basically said to him, if you're going to sell your property for between 1.5 and 1.6 million, I'll buy it. I'll buy it off you right now. If that's where you want to go, I'll buy it right now. And he said, what do you mean? And then we ran the numbers. As a freestanding house with a bit of lipstick, the house is worth anywhere between 1.7 and 1.8 million dollars. So the value, so not in all places, not in all areas is the land going to go up in value. As a matter of fact, currently in most of the Sydney markets, although people are going to get these fanciful ideas that the price of the properties have just doubled in value, they're not. You got to be careful. There are some areas where the mathematics will work because you got to include cost of construction. You got to include the development costs, council contributions. You got the GST that the developer has to pay. As I said, the cost of construction and all the taxes that the developer has to pay on the way to the sale. And the mathematics don't work out. So there are certain parts. So this was in Dundas Valley, another potential duplex site in Canley Heights. Again, the same thing. Talked our client out of selling it to a developer because I said the same thing. If you want to give it away to a developer, I'll buy it. I will buy it. I've got a syndicate that will buy it. And we'll say thank you very much because we've just made an extra couple of $100,000 in our pocket on the sale. So this is where people have got to be very, very careful. Obviously, there are a couple other areas. Won't bore our viewers with other details, but this is where people have got to be very, very careful, Martin. And the other thing is, Martin, is this proposal makes just about every house, I'm just talking in general terms now, just makes about every house a duplex site. But it doesn't necessarily work as a duplex site or a semi-detached or whatever, attached or whatever other ways you could carve the sale. It's got to be determined on what how the block is, where it is, where the amenities are, where the sewer lines run through, in other words, the development and construction costs. But everybody, when this hits, watch this space, everybody's going to get excited, and for a period of time, we're going to get people that are going to be thinking that the homes have just gone up from 1 million to 2 million, literally overnight. But it's not going to be the case because developers are going to be, they've got to run the numbers and they've got to go on the resale values. The other point that I want to stress tonight, to our followers and our viewers, is there'll be a lot of unsuspecting property owners that will get conned by the local selling agents to sell the properties to developers, and they will undersell them. Because in my opinion, in most parts of Sydney, there is greater value as a house and land than as a duplex site at the moment. And unless construction costs drop dramatically by 20-30%, which I can't see that happening anytime soon, unless a lot of things change and unless a lot of the taxes are waived by the state government, which that's never going to happen. The block of land with your house is going to be worth a lot more when you run the numbers. And I will go toe to toe on any debate. Point a suburb, point a property, and after 5 minutes of research, I can come back with the numbers and give you the details. But that's the unfortunate thing, Martin. A lot of unbeknownst property owners, particularly the elderly or foreigners, are going to think that the selling agents are going to do the right thing, and they're going to be literally underselling the properties. Why are they going to be doing that? Because it's an easy commission. One, they'll be selling it to the mates too, to the developer mates too, and guess what? They'll get another double commission when the developer gives the sale of the duplexes back to the selling agent to sell. So the winners in a lot of these cases are going to be the selling agents. The losers are going to be potentially be vendors. So you've got to be careful. As I said, there are some parts of Sydney, there are some markets in Sydney that the numbers work very well, and sellers could do very well by selling to developers and that, and around in homes that are literally just about dilapidated, and people aren't going to have the cash flow or the cash to bring them up to speed. They just become unlivable.
Right, and a thought I had as you were talking was that if you actually do subdivide and you basically create two plots on what was one plot, Presumably, from a land tax perspective, that means that the government's going to win again because they're going to be able to actually tax 2 plots rather than 1 plot. Nobody's spoken about that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I was saying. This is the whole thing where you and I have talked about, why that push, why there has been a push in the past as to high rise, and everybody, the left and the right, parked the medium density developments because they get greater drinks. The local governments get a greater drink as well out of the council contributions and everything else. Then there's the GST at the end of when developers sell. So yeah, this is it. But people just got to be careful. As I said, every house will have to be assessed on its own merit. Based on the condition, the location, the position, when I say position, the amenities that run through it or may not, whether it falls away from the road or falls down to the road, all these things are going to have to be taken into consideration. But the important thing is because they make blanket statements, there's at first there's going to be this people are going to go to the bank and say, I want to draw down on the equity because my property's doubled in value because the state government said so.
Yeah, well, the government will do what they can to keep those property prices up. There's no interest in seeing property prices come down. And that, of course, is part of the problem. And just in terms of that broader perspective, there was this quite interesting article that said, how did we get into this housing crisis and how do we get out of it? I thought what was interesting was that actually they did recognize that there is a crisis, or they said we had crises previously, and then they tried to say, well, who's to blame and what's created it? But I have to say that their thoughts about how to solve it were a bit limited. But nevertheless, kudos to at least at one stake in the ground saying we have a crisis. But I tell you what, most of the property spruiking is still going on. This was the latest that I saw from the housing market in Townsville is strong, getting stronger, they wrote. But actually then I looked at my data in this particular postcode. And interestingly, this is to the end of June. Mortgage stress is now at 63%. Rental stress is at 40%. And sure, there is a scenario where prices could still rise, but I'd also highlight the fact that in my best case scenario, that's true. But in the base case scenario, which is more realistic, it's a little bit unlikely that we are going to see huge growth in the area. And in fact, there could be a bit of a fall. So I think it's worth just highlighting the fact that many of the spruiks don't really take much notice of what's really going on. But there was actually at least some recognition in a report, again, quoting my research relating to the Bank of Mum and Dad, which was highlighting the fact that 59% of first home buyers need parents to absolutely help to be able to buy their property. And that's my latest research. The average contribution from the Bank of Mum and Dad's more than $110,000 now and rising. And if you don't have that, then you can't get in. And then, of course, there's the old debate about, well, should you be using super to get in? Well, probably not. Although, of course, that's a polarizing view with the one side of politics saying, well, we're going to allow people to raid their super. The author of this particular article made the point that not many of those with a large super fund are likely to be in on the act because as you're younger, your super contributions will be quite small and the accumulation won't really have happened yet. So the idea of getting 20 to 30,000 or more is a bit unlikely, maybe 28,000 if you are lucky. And he concludes that more needs to be done to help people get into the housing market, but decimating already small super balances isn't the answer, which I think is probably worth highlighting. And I guess, Edwin, what I want to make a point is your insight about the true fallout of the proposal to effectively subdivide is way, way more powerful than all of this stuff that we see in the mainstream media. But I haven't seen anybody making the point that you made. Why? Because it's not in their interests.
No, it's not in their interest to break down those articles as to they generalize the property market. What's the property market? In the property market, you've got even on the numbers that we talk about, you've got freestanding homes, you've got apartments, you've got townhouses, you've got villas, you've got you've got land, you've got properties under company title, you've got properties under all different different community titles, and it all affects the values and it all affects the different things. But yeah, I can tell you now, like as I said, as I posted last week and the week before, I'm trying to get Mince to give Dusty and I a shot at brokering the deal. I'm sure, like I keep on saying, I can get him 650 apartments already built for the $450 million. I mean, show me the money and I'll give you the properties. And I can buy them at 2017, 2018 prices. So this is the whole thing. And there are other, but even if it's a one or two, I've got tradespeople that we work with, that we've been talking as they work on the homes that we've purchased for our clients. So we're helping them do the renovations now, and they look at the home, they look at the prices, and they've been telling us, "Gee, I wish I thought more about buying a freestanding home than apartments."
Yep.
And one of them's on his knees, and I can buy his apartment, which is in Hurstville. I can buy his apartment, his investment property with Hurstville, that he got conned into buying off the plan in 2017, 2018 for literally what he paid for. And he's that desperate. But I mean, not that I want to buy it, but if that was the case, so this is the thing. This is what you don't hear, Martin. You just hear that they lump it all in the one part, and they say, "Oh, the property market." I mean, but our viewers are a lot smarter. Our followers are a lot smarter than the average Joe out there, and the average politician out there, and a property reporter that sits in some in the basement of the somewhere writing typing away and putting shit out on X and everywhere else. This is it. This is where you've got to be careful, like these mortgagee sales and distressed sales and this and that. But this is why we come back. We always come back to the numbers that paint a more realistic picture. And I mean, there's only so much we can share on a Monday evening property rants without also sharing more of our intellectual property and other things. But I've given a lot, and I hope and I believe that our followers are way ahead of the game. The average pundit out there trying to get in or sell or rent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate all your insights, Edwin. And in the current environment, they're hugely valuable. And just on the current environment, it's sort of highlighting again that Christopher Joy was at it once again, saying that Australia likely has a bigger inflation problem because the RBA is patently not willing to do its job, and that the expectation is that there has to be a further rate rise. And other economists are also saying the same. There was this article that said that there'd been a bit of a survey from 37 economists, and a lot of them were saying that rates will stay high for a lot longer. And, it is worth putting this in context. So all of the discussions that we're having here is in a context where interest rates are higher for longer, where more people are getting caught in the pincer movement of these higher rates. And as we said earlier on, all of the tax cuts and the other bits and pieces will help marginally, but they're not really going to solve the problem. And if rates stay higher for another year or so, which is what some people are now suggesting, then things are going to get really, really sticky for many people. And yet the politicians, and I will put the state and the federal politicians in the same bucket here, really aren't interested in solving the underlying issues. There are ways of doing it. Turn migration down, for example, deal with the gas pricing issue with it later on. There are things that could be done that would actually fundamentally shift the dial, but that's politically unacceptable for all sorts of reasons. And I just want to put this chart up. Go on.
But Martin, you're naughty to even think about those things. How dare you even think about those things? you're going to get deplatformed from YouTube if you keep on, spurring that sort of shit.
You mean there are solutions, but not solutions that people want to talk about. Well, I'm going to continue to talk about them because I think it's important. And by the way, just a stake in the ground, the Indeed Australian jobs ads declined again, right? I think that's worth just highlighting the fact that we've actually got probably a worse jobs market than the official numbers are actually suggesting. I think the unemployment numbers are probably not representing the truth. But this is the other one, which is also quite interesting. If you look, this is from AMP, if you look at the accumulated shortage of housing in Australia, it's continuing to rise. So we have a continued undersupply. And that undersupply of housing is really important to understand because it underpins what we're seeing in some of the dynamics that we talk about, week in and week out. Why is it that in some areas prices are still relatively strong and moving higher? Well, we're not building enough stuff. We've got more people chasing those same properties, particularly standalone houses, I notice, relative to units. And going back to your earlier story about Hurstville, just look at North Ryde units. Just look at those. 2017 was the peak of price of North Ryde units. They've been going down ever since. And of course, you've got the other issue, which you've got this continued problem with poor quality construction. So effectively what we have is we have defects, and those defects are now translating into much higher costs through the strata fees. And so I'm talking to many investors who are now really scared about what to do. They've lost capital value. They're now getting hit over their 4x2 with the higher interest rates, and now they've got the strata fees. And if you think that defects are a thing of the past, well, this was actually reported this week with a new development in the Canterbury Road at Earlston Park with 26 defects, including uncontrolled cracking in the basement, concrete slab, and other defects, including inadequate waterproofing and water damage of the roof. So the defect story continues. We've been talking about this for how many years, Edwin? So let's hope our followers are at least aware.
Yeah, look, we our followers are aware, but others aren't, and the governments don't want to listen. They really don't want to listen. At least Perrottet, still watches our show, and but unfortunately he got kicked out because he didn't want to campaign over in Eastwood and Epping like the others did.
No, very true. Well, let's get on to the numbers just before we run out of time, Edwin. And it's worth just saying that we believe the numbers are a very important indicator of what's going on, and we've been calling for some time the difference between Sydney and Melbourne. Well, this difference continues. If you look at the Sydney story on the 24th, we had 16,324 properties listed. If we skip forward to the 1st of July, 16,706. So the listings are rising slightly. And we see this interesting acceleration where the listings for this year are a little higher than last year, but are still relatively down on what we would have seen perhaps 2 or 3 years ago.
100%, 100%. But both last year and this year, the same week last year and this year, the listing numbers picked up a bit, not as much last year to what they have this year. This year, from the numbers that we just mentioned there was 400 rise. Last year, there was a 200 rise in the same week. But yeah, the demand's still very, very high in a lot of areas, in a lot of hot and in demand areas, and we're just also going to be keeping an eye on the difference between the freestanding homes and the apartments. If these numbers continue to rise, we'll see which group start having more listings on market than the other. But my guess is freestanding homes are way too low to quench this this beast, this dragon.
Exactly right. Well, let's look at the story in Melbourne. On the 24th, we had 26,833 properties listed, and then jump forward a week to the 1st of July, 27,112 properties listed. And once again, Edwin, I want to highlight the difference between the houses and the apartments. We've got 13,700 houses on the market in Melbourne, which shows you we have a problem in Melbourne, and we know why we've got
Yeah,
a problem in Melbourne, right?
yeah, and we've got some just over 7,000 freestanding homes in the Sydney region.
Yeah.
And this is the crazy side of it. The interesting thing that we need to keep an eye on as well is the land, the blocks of land, the parcels of land that are being sold for construction. Nobody wants to build in Melbourne. There's over 4,000, almost 4,500 blocks of land for sale in the Melbourne region, and in Sydney we've only got about 1,100 or so. So yeah, it's going to be it's an interesting dynamic between the how the two cities are faring, and yet we've got both Labor politicians on both ends. But I think our premier is a little bit more commercial than the one in Melbourne. This is what we discussed earlier on. This is we've this is the where you get out of Victoria segment, and they have been getting out of Victoria. This is why thousands of Victorian businesses owners have fled the state, and guess where they're going?
They may be coming across the border, or going up to Queensland, or going over to Western Australia, but they're leaving the state. It's serious. I mean, it's interesting. I see it in my SME surveys too. And what I also have discovered is that the pressure on those businesses from the higher taxes and all the weak economic momentum in Victoria is having a really profound impact. One of the reasons, of course, why also the construction sector in Victoria continues to crater as well. And we are seeing more people in the construction sector either moving to other parts of the country to continue their business or just close the business down. Frankly, it's a mess, but it's not really a surprise. It's worth saying, I think, that in Brisbane, of course, the story is, pretty interesting. Well, it's very much the same, really, with a small number, 3514 on the 24th, and then 3617 on the 1st of July. So there's a slight rise, but still quite a significant weakness there in terms of demand. Prices are still rising quite strongly up in the Queensland area. I guess the upcoming games are going to be part of the story there. But I'm also noticing, again, the number of businesses in the construction sector, small businesses, that are falling over as well. They're actually rising quite fast. And I think that's quite an important observation too. So I've been, again, speaking to a couple of people on one-to-ones in and around Brisbane who cannot get help in the construction of their property or their renovation simply because the costs of doing it makes it impossible now. So even if you buy a property that needs renovation up in the Queensland area, you can't actually afford to get the renovations done. I think that's quite an interesting observation.
Yeah, and this is where people have also got to be very careful when they choose the contractors or the tradespeople. As much as we have different teams that work along with us or in support of our clients when we help them out with the renovations and managing the renovation projects. I mean, this is just one house, two teams that I worked with for a couple of years. Obviously, giving them different jobs in gyprocking. One came in at just below $40,000 for the job, and the other team came in at $28,000. So that's this is where people just got to be careful, and it doesn't mean that just because one team was charging $40,000 that they were going to do a better job. As a matter of fact, the team that did it for $28,000, finished the job, superbly. It's magnificent. You need a lot to impress me. And these guys really outperformed. But sometimes you think that paying more you get a better result. You don't necessarily. This is the things that we're moving into. A lot of tradespeople. It's really a ticket to print money. And this is why we have a lot of people that are opting from. As I said, a lot of our tradespeople that we've shared before that are back in they've got permanent residency here now. But back in China, and also they've obtained a master's. One of them obtained a master's degree in accounting, worked for a second tier accountancy practice, and said, stuff this. Not making much out of it, and has been running a flooring company for the last 7 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
that's the sort of kind of money that's out there, and with less competition, as you said, because there's a lot of there are a lot of pressures, but a lot of it, Martin, is to do with a lot of red tape as well, that small business operators face when they're trying to run a small business, a mum and dad operation, a small family operation, whether it be in the trades or whether it be retail or any other form of manufacturing. The small business operators are just getting hammered left, right, and centre. But that's we could go on. Our followers know just to be careful, just to to sift through the crap, and they'll find the gold.
Yeah, and I'll make the point, Edwin, that the price is determined by obviously, the base, but also how efficiently people work. And my observation is that some of the cheaper prices are cheaper because people are just way more efficient in the way they do things. And that means they can do things in a much quicker time period. I know I was talking to somebody the other day who got 2 quotes to replace a roof. And one was twice the price of the other. But when they actually looked at it, that was because of the fact that the one was taken to take twice as long because they had effectively a less efficient system with a small number of workers, and they actually went for the cheaper one because they had more workers. They came in and did the job very well and went away. So, just going for the more expensive doesn't always solve the problem. We should just go on to the auctions briefly, just to say that, there are some auctions. Victoria is still leading the way. We are, I suppose, through the grey period now, and we'd expect probably the auction momentum to be a little slow. But I have to tell you, Edwin, that I'm still getting quite a lot of stories of people being bounced into taking their property to auction. So they're still not listening to what we're saying, which is that be careful. Don't just go to the auction route simply because your agent says you must take this to auction. Quite often it isn't the best route.
No, and it's going to be interesting to see how things change and the dynamics change in Melbourne when you got more listings on market. As I said, not in all cases, but in a number of cases, the auction campaign is really an excuse for the agents to charge up to double the cost of the marketing, and it's really the same marketing, apart from the auctioneer that comes in and yaddles and twaddles and for half an hour, and you have to pay him $800 to $1,200, whether the property sells or not. People just you've got to really assess the demand, the attendance, but as I said, don't be conned into giving the agent any more than what the standard marketing fees are, which most of it really is paying the domain premier ads and the real estate premier ads that they the 2 portals charge for placing the ads on, but then others make it a business out of making money out of the marketing as much as the auction. The rentals are another story, Martin. The rentals, I think they're sort of staying as is, week on week from last week to this week in Sydney. We are getting into the cooler period, so things are going to slow down a little bit. But a lot of that's coming on is really the apartments, and there's a lot of from my connections, a lot of granny flats being absorbed as well very quickly, and a lot of the bigger homes are the homes are staying on market a little bit longer than what were expected, because people are just choosing to choose smaller dwellings, and because they really can't afford the bigger dwellings anymore, and they're going from the families that are got three children, 2 adult, 2 parents, and going from applied for a unit that one of our friends has, and that they're going from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom. This is the stress that your figures show and your rental stress. That this is the real stories that we get to see. We don't just see the charts, but we get to hear and see and talk to the property managers and the sad stories that they just a lot of them, the property managers just break down and cry. It's crazy. It's crazy what's going out there.
No, it is absolutely. And just on the Melbourne end of things, just to complete the story here, on the 10th of June, there were 10,253. On the 1st of July, 10,520. So a small rise. But again, vacancy rates are still very compressed. The average rental is still rising. So people are still being under huge pressure. And I'm seeing huge amounts of rental stress in and around Melbourne. And interesting, Edwin, postcode 3000, right in the centre of Melbourne, is where some of the most severe rental stress is, which is maybe not too surprising, but it is horrendous to see. Well, as we come to the end of the show, we've got time for a couple of quick tips. And in fact, you've got a bumper edition with 2 this time.
Yeah, look, it's just the first one is just a continuation of of last week's. I've got more insights onto what's happening with this newly imported engineered stones that have just pretty much been landing over the last few weeks. The 1st of July is hit. A lot of the old engineered stone is gone, and the new stuff that is going to hit your kitchen floors is really not that crash hot. Some of our kitchen manufacturers and installers of bench tops have been telling us that we work. Obviously, I'm paying very, very close attention to this. In one case, one of them leaned one of the new slabs on a wall, came back the next day, and the thing was bent like a banana. This is because of less silica, and silica obviously gives it that strength, but the tolerance for silica has gone down. Put under the new regulations, so with less silica, and the seat came back the next day, leaned it up against the wall in the afternoon, came back the next day after overnight, and he was bent like a banana. And in a lot of the rest of them are mainly talking about how brittle the new stone is. So be very careful what you get. Be very, very careful what you get and how it is going to be installed in your kitchens, and ask the installer what are they doing to compensate for the weak stone that's coming in, and and what insurances they're going to give you. That's one of the most important things as well, because there's a lot of crap, and it's going to be a wait and see for the next 6 to 12 months, Martin. It's crazy, but just be very, very careful. The second one is around commissions. We touched a little bit on earlier on in the show, but this is where the sliding scale is rearing its head again. This is where agents are pushing for the listing of properties in parts of Sydney, where they basically telling the vendors that the homes are worth 1.5, and this is the unsuspected vendors, generally the elderly or foreign owners that don't really understand the market, that don't have immediate family to rely on to give them a little bit more support around this area. So they're basically saying that they'll do the sale or take carriage of the sale of the property for a very low commission, in some cases 1% or even 1.2% inclusive of GST, where the average for that area would be anywhere around the 1.5 to 1.7%. And they're getting the listing. But what they're doing is they're saying, look, we'll do it. We'll go out at 1%, and anything above the $1.5 million that we get for your property, we will, we'd like you to give us a bonus of 10 cents or even up to 20 cents in the dollar thereafter. And unsuspectedly, the owners of the properties don't realize that the properties are really worth anywhere between 1.6 and $1.7 million. So do the math, Martin. That's an extra 10,000 to 20,000 extra on the second on that $100,000, and this is the crazy stuff that goes out there. And Fair Trade in New South Wales are not across a lot of the shenanigans that go on with with selling agents, and it's rearing its head. Two people that we're now helping them to make sense of the agency agreements that they signed. In one case, we're confronting the agent that got them to sign this, and they've got good grounds, that we're standing on, but it's something that's going to, unfortunately, they signed before they called us.
Absolutely, and this whole idea of that sliding scale. And I mean, it's almost a version of underquoting yet again, isn't it? But it's actually translating into dollars for the agent. And just remember, folks, that the agent is there to maximize his return, not necessarily to maximize your return. So it's worth reading the small print and negotiating hard. And I always am surprised by how little attention the vendors and prospective vendors actually pay to the words and conditions in the things they sign. And sometimes they get, I think, taken for a ride as a result of that. So, Edwin, it's worth highlighting that. Folks, be cautious, be careful. Remember that the agent is there not just for your own interests.
Look, 100%, man. 100%. And this is why people follow us, and this is why people watch the show, because they want to be in the know and stay ahead of the pack.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, sponsored by Champion.
Well, we'll be back next week, because there's always more to talk about. And we talk about the property insider that Edwin is, and this is why, because effectively what we're doing is giving you some of the inside running with regard to the property market and what's going on, and specifically what some of the things that are traps for the unwary. And I'm pleased to say, Edwin, that over the years we've had a huge number of people thank us for what we've done on this channel, and specifically on the rants here, to make people more aware and be smarter. And I guess if we can continue that, then we'll continue to make the shows. So I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Yeah, as they say in South America, man, hasta mañana.